He, a skeptical tycoon, doubted goodness existed. She, pregnant and abandoned, sold flowers on the street corner, maintaining dignity and grace. Seeing her at a traffic light sparked something within him. He watched her handle hardship without losing her sweetness, confronted with her uncommon beauty. Against his cynical nature, the millionaire fell for her purity, feeling an overwhelming desire to protect her. Prepare for a twist, where society and the past will try to destroy the tycoon's love for the pregnant flower girl. But true love will prove that purity and kindness are the greatest riches. Watch this story to the end. You'll be amazed. If you enjoy love stories and romance, subscribe to this channel, leave a comment. We post videos like this every day. Continuing, Lily Sullivan adjusted the flower basket on her arm, feeling the weight of her 7-month belly, making each movement more challenging. The afternoon sun of September in downtown Manhattan beat down on the asphalt, and she sought the shade of a tree near the intersection of Fifth Avenue and Central Park South. Her hands, marked by hard work, delicately arranged the daisies and roses she'd bought at the Chelsea Flower Market at 5 in the morning. Each flower represented a hope, the hope of selling enough to pay the rent on the small apartment she shared with 2 other women in Queens. "Flowers, fresh flowers," she called out in a sweet but tired voice. Passers-by hurried past, some avoiding her gaze, others whispering comments about just another pregnant girl panhandling. Lily swallowed her wounded pride and continued smiling. It wasn't panhandling, it was honest work. When Michael ran off with her last savings, leaving only a cowardly note, she could have given up. But there was a life growing inside her, a reason to keep fighting. 20 miles away, on the top floor of a mirrored skyscraper on Wall Street, Richard Valmont finished yet another meeting that had moved millions of dollars. His company, Valmont Investments, controlled everything from tech startups to hotel chains. At 40 years old, he had built an empire, but lived like a prisoner in a crystal tower. The panoramic windows of his office offered a stunning view of the city, but he felt completely disconnected from it. "Mr. Valmont, your mother called again about tomorrow's charity gala," informed Sarah, his secretary, interrupting his thoughts. "She insists she knows someone perfect for you," Richard sighed, loosening his Italian silk tie. Always the same thing. Women from high society, interested in his wealth, feigning affection for status. He had given up on true love long ago after discovering that his ex-fiancée, Emily, had faked her feelings only to access his fortune. Since then, he had built increasingly higher walls around his heart. "Cancel any personal engagements this week, Sarah. I need to focus on the quarterly reports." Traffic was heavier than usual as Richard drove his black Porsche through the streets of Manhattan. Unlike other executives, he preferred to drive himself. It was one of the few times he felt in total control of something. The traffic light turned red on Fifth Avenue, and he stopped, drumming his fingers on the leather steering wheel. That's when he saw her. Lily was standing under the tree, one hand supporting her aching back, the other holding the flower basket. The sun filtered through the leaves, created a golden halo around her, and there was something in her posture, a serene dignity despite her obvious vulnerability, that made him completely forget about the meeting that awaited him. She wasn't begging desperately like other street vendors. Instead, she offered her flowers with a genuine smile to each person who passed, accepting refusals with grace. When a gust of wind knocked some daisies from her basket, Richard watched her bend down with difficulty, carefully picking up each flower as if they were precious treasures. A well-dressed businesswoman passed by her and inadvertently stepped on one of the fallen flowers. Lily simply smiled and said, "Don't worry, it happens," cleaning up the remains of the crushed flower. Something broke in Richard's chest. In his 40 years of life, surrounded by people who lied, manipulated, and calculated every word, there was a woman who radiated genuine goodness. She didn't know who he was. There was no interest in her eyes, only a purity that he thought no longer existed in the world. The light turned green, but Richard couldn't take his foot off the brake. The cars behind him started honking, but he was mesmerized by the way she caressed her rounded belly as she waited for the next customer. There was a light in her eyes that contrasted completely with the harshness of the urban environment around her. When he finally managed to move forward, Richard looked in the rearview mirror and saw her still there, offering her flowers with the same tireless sweetness. For the first time in years, something inside him had awakened, a feeling he thought he had buried forever. That image would be etched in his mind, haunting him for days to come like a silent obsession. That night, alone in his luxurious penthouse, Richard couldn't focus on anything but the pregnant flower girl who had touched his soul in a way he couldn't explain. Fate had placed two completely opposite worlds on a collision course, and neither would ever be the same. Over the next 3 days, Richard found excuses to pass by Fifth Avenue, always at the same time. He changed the route of his meetings, cancelled important appointments, all to have a few seconds of seeing that woman who had turned his world upside down. He watched her from afar, studying every gesture, every smile offered to passers-by, the way she arranged the flowers in the basket, how she talked lovingly to her belly, how she shared her simple lunch with a homeless man who passed by. Sarah began to find her boss's changes in schedule odd. "Mr. Valmont, the meeting with the Japanese investors has been rescheduled 3 times. They are questioning our commitment." "Reschedule it for next week," muttered Richard, distracted, shuffling papers without really reading them. His mind was too busy imagining what Lily's laugh would sound like, what her voice would sound like saying his name. Lily, in turn, had noticed the elegant man in the luxury car who passed by at the same time every day. At first, she thought it was a coincidence, but the way he slowed down, how his eyes fixed on her through the tinted glass, began to make her uneasy. Mrs. Davis, the lady who sold hot dogs on the corner, had also noticed. "Be careful with that one, honey. Rich guy hanging around like that never wants anything good. I've seen too many pretty girls get into trouble because of promises of an easy life." But there was something different in that man's eyes. It wasn't the predatory look she had learned to recognize and fear. It was something deeper, almost lonely, as if he were looking for something he couldn't name. On Thursday, both their lives took an unexpected turn. A torrential downpour hit Manhattan in the middle of the afternoon, catching Lily off guard. She tried to protect the flowers with plastic wrap, but the strong wind tore almost all her merchandise from her hands, scattering colorful petals across the soaking sidewalk. Pregnant and unsteady, she slipped trying to pick up the flowers, falling to her knees on the wet pavement. Richard, who was returning from a meeting when the rain started, saw the scene through his windshield. He didn't think twice. He stopped the car in a no-parking zone, turned on the hazard lights, and ran to her, completely ignoring the $3,000 suit that was getting soaked. "Are you hurt?" he asked, offering his hand to help her up. The deep, concerned voice made Lily look up, meeting intense brown eyes full of a genuine concern that surprised her. I'm okay," she stammered, accepting his help. When he touched her, an electric current passed between them. Richard felt the delicacy of her hand, and Lily sensed the gentle strength with which he supported her. "My flowers." "Forget the flowers. You need to get out of the rain." Without waiting for a response, Richard took off his jacket and placed it over her shoulders, guiding her to his car. The protective gesture completely disarmed Lily's defenses. Inside the Porsche, the silence was tense. Lily dried her face with a tissue he had offered, feeling out of place in the luxurious environment. The smell of fine leather mixed with his masculine cologne created an unsettling intimacy. "I'm Richard," he said finally, turning on the heater. "Richard Valmont." Lily Sullivan." She hesitated. "Thank you for helping me. You didn't have to ruin your clothes." Clothes can be bought. You could have been hurt. The sincerity in his voice made her look at him again. There was a vulnerability there that contrasted with his imposing appearance. "Do you always pass by here?" she asked, curious despite herself. Richard blushed slightly. "Sometimes. I work in the area." It was a half-truth. He worked miles away, but he couldn't admit that he had changed his entire routine because of her. "I sell flowers here every day. It's a good spot." Lily caressed her belly unconsciously. "I need the money for when the baby is born." The mention of the baby created an uncomfortable silence. Richard looked at the absent ring on her finger and felt a mixture of curiosity and something he couldn't name. It was none of his business, but the question escaped. "The father, there is no father," Lily cut in, with a firmness that hid the pain. "There's just me and my child." Her definitive tone ended the subject, but awakened in Richard a protective instinct that he hadn't felt in years. How could someone abandon a woman like that? The indignation he felt surprised him. The rain subsided, and Lily knew she needed to get back. "I can get out here, thank you again. I'll take you home." "You don't have to. I live far away, and you certainly have important things to do." The polite but firm refusal showed Richard that Lily wasn't like the other women he had known. She didn't want anything from him beyond the basic kindness that any human being deserved. This intrigued him even more. "At least let me replace your flowers, the ones you lost today." Lily studied him for a moment. There was sincerity in his eyes, but also an intensity that made her nervous. "Why would you do that? You don't even know me." "Maybe that's exactly why." The enigmatic answer hung in the air as she got out of the car. Before closing the door, Richard said, "I'll be here tomorrow, same time, to replace the flowers." It wasn't a request. It was a promise. Lily nodded hesitantly and watched him leave, her heart beating strangely. Mrs. Davis approached with an umbrella. "That's the guy with the fancy car, right? What did he want?" I think he just wanted to be kind." "Kindness doesn't exist for free in this world, honey. Rich man being nice to a poor girl always wants something in return." But even with her friend's warning echoing in her mind, Lily couldn't forget the way he had taken off his own jacket to protect her from the rain, or the genuine concern in his voice. There was a hidden sadness in his eyes that she recognized, the sadness of someone who also knew loneliness. That night, while preparing chamomile tea in her small shared kitchen, Lily found herself thinking about the strange encounter. Richard Valmont. The name sounded familiar, but she couldn't place where from. She ran her hand over her belly and whispered to the baby, "What a strange day this was, my love. Mommy met someone very different today." At the same moment, miles away, Richard was in his minimalist penthouse, looking out the window at the city lights. He couldn't get out of his mind the soft scent of Lily's hair when she got into his car, or the courageous way she had refused to accept charity. For the first time in years, he felt alive, awakened to something beyond the numbers and deals that dominated his existence. He turned on his laptop and, almost without realizing it, typed her name into Google. Nothing came up except profiles of other Lily Sullivans. She was invisible to the digital world, a pure soul living on the margins of his gilded reality. And maybe that's exactly what fascinated him so much. The phone rang, his mother, as always, trying to organize his personal life. "Richard, darling, you can't keep avoiding social engagements. Valentina Montero is interested in you, and it would be a perfect match for business." He hung up without answering. For the first time in a long time, the idea of a perfect match for business made him feel nauseous. He had found something real, genuine, and couldn't stop thinking about how to protect that purity from the corrupted world he knew so well. He would return tomorrow, he had promised, and Richard Valmont always kept his promises, especially those he made to himself. The next morning, Richard arrived at the flower spot with a huge bouquet of imported roses. Lily's eyes widened as she saw him approaching. The flowers cost more than she earned in a whole month. "That's too much," she protested, but there was a playful glimmer in her eyes. I can't accept it. It's not a gift. It's a replacement, Richard insisted, with a half smile that Lily hadn't seen yet. You lost flowers yesterday because of me. Because of you. You didn't make it rain. But I distracted you. The unexpected answer made Lily blush slightly. During the following week, a strange routine was established. Richard stopped by every day, always buying flowers, always finding excuses to prolong the conversation. He discovered that Lily had studied education before her pregnancy interrupted her plans, that she dreamed of having a school for underprivileged children, that she voraciously read used books she bought at thrift stores. "Why did you stop studying?" he asked one afternoon as she arranged the flowers in her basket. Lily hesitated. Life took a detour. It happens. Richard realized there was hidden pain in that simple answer. He began to understand that behind her serenity there were deep scars. This intrigued him even more. How could someone who had clearly suffered manage to maintain so much inner light? "What about you?" Lily asked, breaking the silence. "Why doesn't a man like you have a family, a ring, children?" The question hit Richard hard. He swallowed hard, looking at his own hands. "I learned that some things are dangerous illusions." Love, true love, the bitterness in his voice was palpable. "I discovered that when you have money, people love what you can give, not who you are." Lily studied him for a moment. There was an old wound there, well hidden under the facade of success. It must be very lonely living mistrusting everyone. The simplicity of the observation disarmed him completely. "It is," he admitted, surprising himself with his own honesty. Their daily encounters became the highlight of the day for both of them. Richard began to arrive earlier, helping her arrange the flowers. Lily began to save the most beautiful ones for him, creating special arrangements that made him smile genuinely. "You have a knack for this," he commented, watching her create a delicate bouquet. "You should have your own flower shop." "Maybe someday," sighed Lily. "When things calm down." "Do things calm down?" "They have to. I can't raise my child in uncertainty forever." The mention of her child always created a strange pang in Richard's chest. It wasn't jealousy exactly, but something close to it. A question he couldn't ask. Who had been the man who had won her love and then abandoned her? One day, while they were talking, a black Mercedes stopped near them. Richard tensed immediately when he recognized the driver, George Valmont, his father, accompanied by Emily Carter, his ex-fiancée. Richard's blood ran cold. "Richard?" Emily got out of the car, displaying the calculated smile he knew so well. "What a coincidence to find you here." Lily noticed the instantaneous change in Richard's posture. He became rigid, distant, as if he had put on a mask. "Emily, Dad." His voice was formal, cold. "Son, what are you doing here?" George looked at Lily with evident disapproval. "We have the board meeting in 15 minutes. I was buying flowers." Richard felt like a teenager being caught doing something forbidden. Emily examined Lily from head to toe, her gaze stopping on her prominent belly. A cruel smile appeared on her lips. "How interesting. I didn't know you had developed a taste for charity." The venomous tone made Lily's blood boil, but she maintained her dignity. "Excuse me," she murmured, beginning to gather her things. "No," said Richard, surprising everyone, including himself. "Don't leave." "Richard," George's voice carried a clear warning, "don't forget who you are and what you represent." The tension in the air was palpable. Lily saw the conflict in Richard's eyes. The man she had known in recent days versus the tycoon he was expected to be. She understood that worlds so distant didn't mix without consequences. "It's okay," she said softly to Richard. "You don't owe me anything." But her words, instead of relieving him, hit him like a punch. Emily laughed softly, a sound he had always hated. "Come on, Richard, let the girl get back to her work." George got into the car, waiting. Emily touched Richard's arm possessively. "I'll talk to you later, darling. We have a lot to catch up on." Richard looked at Lily, who had moved away discreetly, picking up the wet shards of her workday. He wanted to run to her, apologize, explain, but family expectations, the weight of his name, the social pressure, everything conspired against him. I'll see you tomorrow," he said, loud enough for her to hear. Lily didn't answer but nodded slightly before disappearing into the crowd. Inside the car, Emily wasted no time. "Richard, darling, I know you're going through a difficult phase, but playing savior with this situation can be very dangerous. Imagine if the press finds out. Tycoon Valmont involved with pregnant street vendor. It would be a scandal." Her words echoed in Richard's mind throughout the meeting. He knew Emily was right about the social consequences, but for the first time in his life, he couldn't care less. He had found something precious in Lily, an authenticity that his world had tried to kill inside him for years. That night, alone again, Richard made a decision that would change everything. It didn't matter what his family thought or what society expected of him. Tomorrow, he would open up completely to Lily. He would tell her about Emily, about the betrayal that had closed him off to love, about how she had awakened feelings that he thought were dead forever. What he didn't know was that Emily was already planning her next move, and that Lily's past held secrets that could destroy any chance of happiness between them. Richard arrived at the flower spot the next morning, determined to open up completely to Lily, but she wasn't there. Mrs. Davis, the hot dog vendor, waved to him with concern. "The girl was sick last night. A neighbor called. She's at New York Presbyterian Hospital." Richard's world collapsed. Without thinking about the consequences, he ran to the hospital, using all his influence to find out what room Lily was in. He found her sleeping in the public ward on an improvised cot in the hallway, surrounded by the noise and overcrowding typical of a city hospital. "This is unacceptable," he muttered to himself, observing the precarious conditions. He immediately called the hospital director, a longtime acquaintance, and within 2 hours, Lily had been transferred to a private room on the VIP floor. When she woke up, confused and disoriented, she found Richard sitting next to the bed, looking concerned. Where am I?" she asked, trying to sit up. "At the same hospital, but in a better room. You had a high blood pressure crisis. The doctor said it's dangerous for you and the baby." Lily looked around. The room was luxurious, with a TV, private bathroom, and a window with a view. "I can't pay for this. It's already paid for." "Richard, no." She tried to sit up. "I can't accept this. I can't owe you so much." "You don't owe me anything." He gently took her hand. "Please, stay. For the baby." The argument disarmed her. She closed her eyes, feeling the tears welling up. "Why are you doing this? You don't even know me." Richard took a deep breath. It was time to open up completely. Because you reminded me that I'm still capable of feeling something. 5 years ago, I discovered that the woman I was going to marry was only with me for the money. She had planned everything, the approach, the courtship. She even faked love for 2 years. When I found out, I swore I would never let myself be fooled again. Lily opened her eyes, seeing the raw pain in his face. "Since then, I've lived in isolation. I work, I make money, but I don't really live until I saw you at that traffic light." His voice dropped. "You don't know who I am. You don't want anything from me, and yet there's a light in you that I thought no longer existed in the world." His words touched Lily deeply. She understood the pain of betrayal, of abandonment. "I also know what it's like to be left behind," she confessed. "The father of my child, Michael, said he loved me, lived with me for a year, made plans for marriage, for a family. When I told him about the pregnancy, he disappeared for 3 days. He only came back to take my savings, 2 years of work as a teacher, and vanish." The anger Richard felt was visceral. "He stole from you. Technically, the money was in a joint account. Legally, he didn't do anything wrong." The bitterness in her voice was evident. "But morally, he left a pregnant woman with nothing. That's why you sell flowers on the street corner. It's what I can do while pregnant. No one hires a 7-month pregnant woman. Richard felt a deep connection forming between them. Two people wounded by love, two souls who had lost faith in human goodness, finding something pure in each other. "Lily," he said, holding both her hands in his, "let me take care of you. Not as charity, but because you awaken in me feelings that I thought I had buried forever." She looked at him deeply. She saw the sincerity in his eyes, but also the danger. "We're from different worlds, Richard. Very different. What if I don't care about that?" Before she could answer, the door burst open. Emily entered like a hurricane, followed by a man in a suit whom Lily didn't recognize. "Well, well, what a touching scene," said Emily with venomous sarcasm. "Richard, do you really think you can play savior without consequences?" The man in the suit stepped forward. "Mr. Valmont, I am the Novice family lawyer. We have some information we would like to discuss regarding Miss Sullivan." Lily paled. "What information?" Emily smiled cruelly. "Darling, do you think you can fool a Valmont? We investigated you. We know about Michael Reynolds, about the debts he left in your name, about the eviction notice that's pending, and we know you lied about one important thing." Richard's heart raced. "What are you talking about? Tell him, Lily. Or would you prefer I tell him about your past? Let's say colorful, before you met this Michael character?" Lily closed her eyes, feeling the world collapsing. The secret she had guarded so carefully was about to destroy the only good thing that had happened in her life. "Richard," her voice trembled, "there's something that you need to know about me, about who I was before." "No," he interrupted, rising and facing Emily. "I don't care about her past. Get out of here, now." "Oh, you will care," retorted Emily, "especially when you find out that your pure and innocent Lily used to work as—" "Stop!" Lily screamed, interrupting the revelation. Tears streamed down her face. "Please don't!" Richard looked at her, seeing the despair in her eyes. Whatever the secret was, it was causing her terrible pain. His instinctive protectiveness toward her intensified. "Emily, you have 5 seconds to leave this room before I call security. You're making a mistake, Richard. When you find out the truth, you'll realize that some people don't deserve to be saved." Emily left, but not before casting one last venomous look at Lily. "We'll be back." In the silence that followed, Richard approached the bed again. Lily was crying silently, one hand protecting her belly. "Whatever she wanted to say, I don't care," he said, taking her free hand. "You will care," Lily whispered. "When you know the truth, you'll realize that Emily was right. I don't deserve this, your kindness. Let me decide what I deserve or don't deserve in my life." But Lily had already closed herself off again, the wall of protection erected. The secret that Emily had almost revealed had created a barrier between them that seemed insurmountable. And for the first time since they met, Richard felt that he could lose her before he had even really had her. What had Emily discovered about Lily's past? And why had the simple mention of it broken the strong spirit of the woman he was learning to love? The consequences of this public encounter were just beginning, and both knew their lives would never be the same. 2 weeks had passed since the episode at the hospital, and Richard had managed to convince Lily to accept a small apartment that he had rented for her. "It's temporary," he had insisted, "until you recover completely." Lily had reluctantly accepted, only because of the baby. The apartment was in a middle-class neighborhood, discreet enough not to attract attention, but comfortable for a pregnant woman. Richard visited her daily, always bringing food or small gifts for the baby. They talked for hours, and Lily felt increasingly close to him, despite the secret that consumed her from within. "You don't have to do all this," she said one afternoon, as Richard assembled the crib he had bought. "People will start talking. Let them talk." Richard tightened another screw. "I don't live to please anyone anymore," but the outside world was not willing to leave them alone. Emily had hired a private investigator and discovered things that not even Lily imagined could be tracked down. At the Valmont mansion, an emergency family meeting was underway. "This needs to stop," declared George, throwing a folder full of photos on the table. "The press has already started speculating about Richard's mysterious encounters, and now we have this." The photos showed Richard entering and leaving Lily's apartment, carrying bags, assembling furniture, hugging her at the door. To those who didn't know the story, they looked like a couple on their honeymoon. "Emily brought information about the girl's past," George continued. "Before she met this Michael character, she worked as escort," Emily completed with cruel satisfaction, "for 2 years to pay for college, according to our investigator. Not exactly the purity your son thinks he's found." Mariana Valmont, Richard's mother, turned pale. "My God, if this leaks to the press, the family will be ruined," George said. 50 years building our reputation, destroyed by an emotional whim." Emily approached the window, observing the city lights. "But we can resolve this discreetly. Richard just needs to stop seeing her. I can take care of the rest." "What do you mean by take care of the rest?" Mariana asked. "Money talks, Mariana. Everyone has a price, even street saints." Meanwhile, at the apartment, Lily was experiencing the first Braxton Hicks contractions. The stress of recent days, combined with the emotional pressure of hiding the truth from Richard, was taking its toll. She leaned against the kitchen counter, breathing deeply, when the doorbell rang. It wasn't Richard. It was an unknown man, well-dressed, with a cold smile. "Lily Sullivan? I'm David Miller, a lawyer for the Valmont family. I would like to have a conversation with you." Lily's heart raced. "About what?" "About your situation with Mr. Richard Valmont." He entered without being invited. "We know about your past, Ms. Sullivan, all of it." Lily felt her legs weaken. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Club Venus, Bleecker Street. 2 years working as a VIP escort. Documented." He placed photos on the table. Important clients, politicians, businessmen. Very educational. The photos showed a younger, thinner Lily, dressed elegantly, entering and leaving 5-star hotels accompanied by older men. It was a period of her life that she had tried to forget. The only way she had found to pay for college after her parents kicked her out for refusing to marry the man they had chosen. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice trembling. "For you to stay away from Mr. Valmont permanently." David opened a folder. "In exchange, we offer $100,000, a paid-off apartment in another city, and our guarantee that this information will never become public." "And if I refuse?" "Then tomorrow morning, these photos will be in every tabloid in the country. Pregnant prostitute seduces tycoon, Richard Valmont." Imagine what that will do to his career, to the family's reputation. And imagine what it will do to your chances of getting custody of your child when he's born. The final threat was like a dagger to the heart. Lily knew she had a past that could be used against her in a custody battle. Conservative judges wouldn't look kindly on a former escort. "You have 24 hours to decide," said David, leaving the documents on the table. "Tomorrow night, either you sign this agreement and disappear from his life, or we start distributing these photos." When Richard arrived an hour later, he found Lily in tears, the documents scattered on the table. She tried to hide them, but he was faster. "What the hell is this?" he asked, reading quickly. His expression changed as he assimilated the information, not because of the photos, those didn't shock him, but because of the cruelty of the blackmail. "Is it true?" he asked, his voice too soft. Lily nodded, unable to look at him. "It was the only way to pay for college. My parents kicked me out at 18 because I refused to marry a 60-year-old man they chose. I needed to survive." "For how long?" 2 years, until I graduated. Then I stopped, got a job as a teacher, met Michael." Her voice broke. "I thought I had left all that in the past." Richard knelt before her, holding her face in his hands. "Look at me." When she finally looked at him, she saw only understanding in his eyes. You did what you needed to do to survive. It doesn't change anything I feel for you. It changes everything, Lily exploded. Your family, society. They're right. I'm going to destroy your reputation. And if they use this against me when the baby is born, no one is going to take your child away from you. I won't allow it. How can you be sure? You saw the photos, a conservative judge, a custody battle. I can lose my baby because of this. The pain in her voice broke Richard's heart. He understood the magnitude of what they faced. It wasn't just about them. There was an innocent baby in the middle of it all. So what do you want to do? He asked, already knowing the answer. Accept the agreement. Disappear from your life before it's too late. What if I don't want you to disappear? Then you're going to have to choose between me and everything you've built. Lily caressed her belly. And I can't ask you to make that choice. It would be too selfish. Richard stood up, walking to the window. The city stretched out before him. His city, his empire, his world. A world that was about to declare war on him because of the woman he had learned to love. 24 hours, he murmured. They gave us 24 hours. Richard, you need to understand. I can't risk custody of my child if they make this public. I know. He turned to her, his face grave. I need time to think. When he left that night, both knew they were about to face the biggest storm of their lives. The Valmont family had declared war, and Emily wouldn't rest until she destroyed any chance of happiness between them. What neither knew was that Emily had already begun leaking information to the press, and that the next morning their lives would become public property. The next morning, Richard's phone rang incessantly even before the sun rose. It was Sarah, his secretary, her voice tight with panic. Mr. Valmont, you need to see today's headlines, all the social networks, all the newspapers. Richard turned on the television and felt his blood run cold. Valmont scandal. Tycoon keeps pregnant prostitute in luxury apartment occupied the entire screen. The photos were devastating. Him entering Lily's building, carrying bags, hugging her, but the worst were the old images of her, taken from a website of Club Venus, where she appeared young and seductive alongside powerful men. The anchor continued implacably. According to sources close to the family, Richard Valmont, CEO of Valmont Investments, would be footing all the expenses of Lily Sullivan, former luxury escort who is pregnant of unknown origin. The woman would have used the pregnancy to approach the tycoon and guarantee support. The phone didn't stop. Investors, advisors, the media, everyone wanted explanations. Richard shut everything off and raced to Lily's apartment. He found her in tears, surrounded by curious neighbors in the hallway. Journalists had already discovered the address and were crowding the entrance of the building. She was leaning against the wall, one hand protecting her belly, the other covering her face. "Lily!" He approached, but she recoiled. "Don't come near me," she whispered, desperate. "See, I destroyed your life, exactly as they said would happen. This will pass. We'll face it together." "Together?" She laughed bitterly. "Richard, your company has lost 20% of its stock value since morning. The newspaper said investors are pulling out their money. Your family must be..." As if she had been summoned, Mariana Valmont appeared in the hallway, escorted by security guards who cleared a path through the journalists. Her face was livid with rage. "Richard Henry Valmont," she shouted, not caring about the cameras. "Have you completely lost your mind? Mom, this isn't the time." "It's not the time," Mariana pointed at Lily. "Because of this woman, our family has become a laughingstock. 50 years of reputation thrown in the trash." Lily tried to hide, but Mariana stared directly at her. "You, how much do you want to disappear from my son's life?" "I never asked for anything," Lily replied, her voice trembling but dignified. "Of course not. You're clever. You pretended you didn't want anything while manipulating my naive son." "Mom, stop it." "Stop what? The truth?" Mariana turned to him. "Do you know who she really is? A prostitute, a woman who sold her body to married men, And now she's pregnant with God knows who, using you as a sucker. Enough, Richard roared, completely losing control. You have no right to talk to her like that. But the damage was done. Lily burst into sobs, the contractions returning with force. I need to go to the hospital, she gasped, holding her belly. At the hospital, while Lily was being treated, Richard received the call he had been dreading. George, in a cold voice, "Emergency board meeting now. They want your resignation from the presidency." Dad, you have 1 hour to decide. The company or this woman, you can't have both. When Richard arrived at the company building, he was greeted by a crowd of journalists. The questions came from all sides. Is it true that you are supporting a prostitute? Is the baby yours? Are you going to marry her? How did the family react? In the boardroom, the somber faces of the board members awaited him. For 2 hours, he was bombarded with data. Stocks in free fall, cancelled contracts, the company's reputation tarnished. Emily was there, feigning concern. "Richard, you can still fix this," she said, touching his arm. "Break up with that woman, marry me as always planned, and in 6 months, no one will remember this scandal. And if I refuse?" George stepped forward. "Then you will be removed from the presidency by a vote of no confidence. And without your protection, we guarantee that the girl will face all possible lawsuits. Tax evasion, illegal practice of a profession, neglect of her own child. You can't do that." "We can, and we will," Emily assured, "unless you choose the right side." When Richard finally managed to get back to the hospital, it was almost midnight. He found Lily awake, looking out the window at the illuminated city. "How are you?" he asked, approaching cautiously. "Physically or emotionally?" She didn't look at him. "Physically, I'm fine. The baby is fine. Emotionally?" She sighed deeply. "I saw the news, your company, your family. I destroyed everything." "You didn't destroy anything. It was my past, my choices." She finally faced him, and Richard saw that something had definitely broken in her eyes. "Richard, I need to tell you something. Those photos, they're real. I worked as an escort for 2 years to pay for college. I never told you because I was ashamed, because I knew it would change everything. It doesn't change anything for me. It changes for the whole world," she exploded. "And it changes for my son. Do you think he's going to grow up happy knowing that his mother destroyed the life of a good man? That she became a national laughingstock?" Lily got out of bed with difficulty, picking up a small suitcase she had prepared. "I'm going to accept your family's offer. $100,000 and an apartment in Albany, New York. Away from you, away from the press, away from all this. Don't do that. We can face it together." "Face what, Richard?" Tears ran freely down her face. "You're going to lose everything. Your company, your family, your name. And for what? For a woman who lied to you since the first day?" "You didn't lie. You just didn't tell me everything." "It's the same thing." She headed for the door. "I love you, Richard. I love you more than I thought it was possible to love someone. And that's exactly why I can't stay. I can't be the reason for your destruction. Lily, please. Goodbye, Richard." She stopped at the door without turning around. "Take care of yourself, and thank you for showing me that there are still good men in the world." She left, leaving Richard alone in the hospital room. Outside, he could hear the noise of the reporters who were still waiting for statements. His life had become a circus, and the woman he loved had fled to protect him. 2 hours later, Emily appeared at the hospital with the transfer documents signed by Lily. "She was very sensible," she said with false compassion. "Sometimes true love is knowing when to walk away." Richard looked at the papers, seeing Lily's delicate signature authorizing the move to Albany. She had chosen to sacrifice her own happiness to save him, and worst of all, perhaps she was right. "It's done," said Emily, satisfied. "Now we can rebuild your image, together." But Richard wasn't listening. He was looking out the window, at the city where somewhere Lily was preparing to disappear from his life forever, taking with her the only real thing he had found in the last 10 years. Everything was lost, And for the first time in his adult life, Richard Valmont cried. 3 months had passed since Lily had disappeared from Richard's life. He had returned to his usual routine, meetings, business deals, social dinners with Emily always by his side. To the outside world, everything was back to normal, but inside, Richard was dead. "You need to cheer up," said Emily, adjusting his tie before they entered the charity event of New York high society. "People still comment, but they're already forgetting. Soon everything will be as before, as before." The words echoed in Richard's mind as he greeted the guests with empty smiles. As before meant going back to being the cold, distrustful man he had been. It meant accepting that true love was just an illusion. On the other side of the state, in Albany, New York, Lily was in the small public hospital, holding her newborn son. Gabriel had been born 2 weeks ago, healthy and perfect. But even with the joy of motherhood, she couldn't forget the man she had left in New York City. "He's beautiful," said the nurse, admiring the baby. "He looks like you." Lily smiled sadly. Gabriel had the dark and intense eyes that constantly reminded her of Richard. It wasn't a coincidence. During the last months of pregnancy, she had dreamed so often about him that she sometimes felt as if the baby was an extension of that lost love. Mrs. Olson, her new neighbor, a retired lady who had become her confidant, entered the room with a worried expression. "Lily, dear, I need to tell you something. My granddaughter works as a journalist in New York City. She's been investigating that whole scandal, you know, and she discovered something strange." Lily looked at her attentively. "That woman, Emily, she leaked the information to the press. My granddaughter has a contact at the newspaper who confirmed it. The family didn't know anything until she brought the photos." Lily's heart raced. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely, and more. She hired the detective. She orchestrated everything, including..." Olson hesitated. "Including forging some documents. Those old photos of you, some were edited to look more compromising than they were." Lily felt a fury growing inside her. She had sacrificed her happiness, separated from the man she loved, exiled herself based on lies and manipulations. "Olson, can you do me a favor? Can you ask your granddaughter to investigate further? I need proof." Meanwhile, in New York City, Sarah watched Richard with growing concern. He had lost weight, no longer smiled, and sometimes stood at the window for hours, looking towards Fifth Avenue where he had met Lily. "Mr. Valmont," she said one afternoon, "a strange piece of mail arrived for you. It was a simple letter, without a return address, with only an address in Albany and a photo of Albany Medical Center." Sarah noticed how her boss's hands trembled as he opened it. The photo showed Lily in a hospital bed, holding a baby in her arms. On the back, someone had written, "Gabriel Sullivan, born on November 15th. Mother and son are doing well." Richard studied the photo for long minutes. Lily looked radiant despite her fatigue, and the baby was perfect. He felt a deep pain in his chest, a sense of irreparable loss. That should have been his family. That should have been the happiest moment of their lives. "Who brought this?" he asked Sarah. "A messenger." No identification. That same afternoon, Emily entered his office without warning, as she always did. "What's with that face, darling? Today we have dinner with the Hamiltons. You can't show up with that funeral expression." Richard hid the photo quickly, but Emily was too observant. "What are you hiding?" Before he could react, she grabbed the photo, her face transformed into a mask of anger. "What the hell is this?" She had the baby. So what? Her problem. Emily tore the photo to pieces. "Richard, you need to forget this sick obsession. It's over. She's gone, as agreed." But something in Emily's exaggerated reaction awakened Richard's suspicion. "How did you know she had disappeared?" "Oh, I never told you that." Emily hesitated for a split second, enough time for Richard to realize, well, it's obvious. If she hadn't disappeared, we'd still be dealing with the scandal. "No. You knew specifically that she had accepted the offer and moved. How?" The pressure in his gaze made Emily recoil. Everyone knows. It was reported that she disappeared. Lie. Richard stood up, suspicion turning into certainty. You orchestrated all this, didn't you? The blackmail, the press, everything. I saved you from a manipulator. You manipulated me. His voice echoed through the office. You destroyed the only real thing that happened in my life. Emily tried to touch his face, but Richard recoiled in disgust. Darling, I did it out of love, to protect us, to protect our family, our future. Our future. Richard laughed bitterly. Emily, there was never an our future. You yourself taught me not to trust anyone. How can I trust someone who destroys innocent lives to get what she wants? Emily's mask finally fell. Innocent lives? She was a prostitute, Richard, a pregnant prostitute who saw a golden opportunity in you. And you? What are you then? A woman who uses blackmail and manipulation to get a husband? At least she was honest about what she did to survive. Emily left furiously, but not before launching one last threat. You'll still thank me. When you discover the whole truth about your little saint, you'll realize that I saved you from something much worse. Alone in his office, Richard looked at the torn pieces of the photo on the floor. He knelt down and carefully put them together, like a puzzle. The image of Lily with the baby in her arms formed again, cracked but still beautiful. At that moment, he made a decision that would change everything. No matter what it cost, no matter what he discovered along the way, he was going to Albany. He was going to get Lily and her son. He was going to face Emily, his family, the entire society if necessary, because he had finally understood that a life without true love was not life. It was just an empty existence amid luxury. Sarah entered the office and found him putting the mended photo in his wallet. Mr. Valmont, do you need anything? Yes, Sarah, I need you to prepare the private jet. I'm going to travel. And when I get back... He looked out the window, determination growing in his eyes. When I get back, a lot of things will change around here. The final confrontation was about to begin. And this time, Richard wouldn't let anyone decide his fate for him. Richard arrived in Albany in the late afternoon, driving himself the 200 miles that separated him from Lily. He found the address easily, a simple but decent housing complex. When he rang the doorbell, it was Mrs. Olson who answered. You must be Richard, she said without hostility. Lily is in the backyard with the baby. He found her sitting under an apple tree, breastfeeding Gabriel. Upon seeing him, Lily paled, instinctively protecting her son more. How did you find me? It doesn't matter. Richard approached slowly, as if she were a wounded animal that could flee at any moment. I came to get you. Richard, don't start again. We've already talked about this. Listen first. He knelt before her. I found out about Emily, about the lies, the manipulations, the forged photos. Mrs. Olson told me that her granddaughter is a journalist. Lily looked towards the house where the old woman had disappeared discreetly. She shouldn't have gotten involved. She got involved because you deserve the truth. And the truth is that we were separated by force, based on lies. Richard gently touched Gabriel's face. He's beautiful. He looks like you, Richard. Lily's voice trembled. Even if Emily lied about some things, my past is real. The photos are real, and that will always be between us. Then let's face it together publicly. You don't understand. Your family will never accept it. Society will never accept it. Richard stood up, determination burning in his eyes. Then screw them all. The next day, Richard did something no one expected. He called a press conference at the largest hotel in Albany. Journalists from all over the country traveled to cover what they thought would be a declaration ending the scandal. When the cameras started rolling, Richard stepped onto the podium with Lily by his side, Gabriel in her arms. The murmur of the audience ceased instantly. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, Richard began, his voice firm and clear. You came here thinking you were going to hear apologies or justifications. You came to the wrong place. Lily looked at him surprised. They had rehearsed something completely different. I am here to formally introduce the woman I love and the son I have chosen as my own." The statement caused a stir in the audience. Lily Sullivan is the most courageous, upright, and pure woman I have ever met. She has faced adversities that would break much stronger people, and yet she has maintained her dignity and kindness. "Mr. Valmont," interrupted a reporter, "but the accusations about her past is that of a young woman who was kicked out of her home at 18 and did what she needed to do to survive and study. I see no dishonor in that. I see courage." Richard looked directly at the cameras. "How many of you would have the same strength?" Another journalist stood up. "And what about the accusations that she approached you out of self-interest?" Lily took a deep breath and stepped forward to the microphone. "I can answer that." Her voice trembled at first, but it gained strength. "I never knew who Richard really was when we met. To me, he was just a kind man who bought flowers. When I found out about his wealth, I tried to stay away. And when the blackmail started, I chose to leave his life myself. But you accepted money from his family," insisted the reporter. "I accepted it because they threatened me with the custody of my son, because they made me believe that fighting for love would be selfish." Tears rolled down her face, but her voice remained firm. "But I recently discovered that many of those threats were false, that I was manipulated by someone who wanted Richard for herself." In the front row, George and Mariana Valmont watched in shock. Emily beside them was livid. "That's why," Richard continued, "I am here to announce that I am stepping down permanently from the presidency of Valmont Investments. I will use my share of the inheritance to start something new, with Lily by my side." The uproar in the audience was immense. Reporters shouted questions, flashes popped. "And do you intend to marry her?" shouted a journalist. Richard turned to Lily, took her free hand, and knelt right there before all the cameras in the country. "Lily Sullivan, will you marry me? Not for the money, not for social position, but for the true love that we discovered together." Lily looked at him, then at Gabriel in her arms, then at the hundreds of people who awaited her answer. She saw in Richard's eyes the same purity that he had always seen in hers. "Yes," she whispered, then repeated louder, "Yes, I will." The kiss that followed was photographed by dozens of cameras, but for the two of them, the world had disappeared. There were only the three of them, Richard, Lily, and Gabriel. Emily rose furiously from the audience. "This is ridiculous. You'll regret it." "No," said Richard, still kneeling, looking directly at her. "The one who will regret it is you, because you just lost the last chance to have something real in your life." 6 months later, Richard and Lily were married in a simple ceremony in the church in the neighborhood where she had grown up. George and Mariana, after months of resistance, finally appeared at the wedding. The pressure of the positive press and the irresistible charm of Gabriel had softened their hearts. Richard had kept his promise. He created a new social impact company focused on education for underprivileged communities. Lily went back to studying, now doing a master's degree in early childhood education, with all costs paid by her husband, who saw this not as an expense, but as an investment in the future they would build together. Gabriel grew up surrounded by love, calling Richard Daddy from his first words. To the world, he was officially a Valmont. Richard had insisted on the legal adoption. One Sunday afternoon, the three were in the garden of their new home. Not an ostentatious mansion, but a cozy home where they had planted a flower garden that Lily cared for with affection. "Do you regret it?" asked Lily, watching Richard play with Gabriel on the grass. "Regret what?" "Having left your old life, the empire, the prestige." Richard pulled her into his arms, kissing her forehead. "My love, I didn't leave my old life. I finally started to live." Gabriel laughed loudly when Richard threw him up in the air, and the sound of the laughter echoed through the garden like music. There, Surrounded by the scent of the flowers his wife cultivated and the joy of the son he had chosen as his own, Richard finally understood what it was to have everything. Emily had tried to destroy them with lies and manipulations. Society had tried to separate them with prejudices and judgments, but true love had won all the battles. And when Gabriel grew up, he would know that he was born from the greatest act of courage that two wounded hearts could offer each other, the courage to love again, despite all the risks. The story of Richard and Lily proved that sometimes the greatest treasure is found in the most unexpected places, and that true love knows no social class, past, or judgments. It only knows the purity of two hearts that recognize each other and choose to fight together against the whole world.